welcome back to my channel. My name is Holly, and in today's video we are going to be talking about the worst books that I read this fall. So in today's video I just want to start off, I can't believe that I have to give this disclaimer, but I just know how people are, so I'm gonna give the disclaimer. Just because I may not have liked your favorite book does not mean you have to be mean to me in the comments. It doesn't mean that I don't know what I'm talking about or anything like that. Everybody has different opinions, everyone's life experiences are different, and everybody likes different things. So I apologize if I hurt your feelings, if I did not like maybe your favorite book or something like that, but I don't know what to tell you. If you're gonna be upset with me about that, I'm sorry. I don't know how to make that better for you. But hopefully everybody that's watching this video can understand that we can all have different opinions on the same books and all be valid in our opinions. So with that being said, I actually didn't have too many 2 and under star books this fall, which I'm really happy about. I actually read quite a few 4 and 5 star books. So I am going to be talking about books that I rated 3 stars and under, which normally I would probably categorize a 3-star in with like the best books that I read, but then I would only have like a couple to talk about in this video. So I'm just going to put 3 stars and under wrapped up in this video. And yeah, I was very, very lucky that I had so many good reads. So that video will be coming next. If you want to find out what were my top reads that I read this fall, that's going to be the next video coming in a couple of days. And this is basically just serving as a wrap up, but instead of just like doing a normal wrap up that I've seen lots of other booktubers doing, I wanted to separate it into the best books that I read in the season and the worst books that I read in the season. So without further ado, let's get on into it, and we are going to start by talking about 800 Grapes by Laura Dave. Now, this book ended up being something that I don't typically read, so that is honestly probably why I rated it as low as I did. I gave it a 2 stars. I normally like to read thrillers, horror, that sort of thing is typically my go-to. I don't read a lot of contemporary or contemporary romance or anything like that. Like, that's typically a genre I do not read. So I accidentally ended up reading it. And the reason for that is because I had just finished another of Laura Dave's book, which is actually on my top books that I read, and she wrote a thriller. So I wanted to find out more. Like, I read that book first and I really, really liked it. And so I thought, I'm gonna search this author and see what other books she has read. So I read the synopsis for this one, and I don't know if it was just like my mind. Now that I go back and read it, I can read it both ways, and I can kind of see how it sounds like a thriller, but then also I can kind of see how it doesn't sound like a thriller. So to drive that home, I'm gonna read you the synopsis just so that you guys can like understand why I maybe thought this could have been a thriller, because she had written such another amazing thriller. I was like, well, this one it didn't even occur to me, hey, maybe this author doesn't only write horror or thriller. But the synopsis says, there are secrets you share and secrets you hide. Growing up on her family's Sonoma vineyard, Georgia Ford learns some important secrets. The secret number of grapes it takes to make a bottle of wine, 800. The secret ingredient in her mother's lasagna, chocolate. The secret behind ending a fight, hold hands. But just a week before her wedding, 30-year-old Georgia discovers her beloved fiance has been keeping a secret so explosive it will change their lives forever. Georgia does what she's always done. She returns to her family's vineyard, expecting the comfort of her long-married parents and her brothers and everything familiar. But it turns out her fiancé is not the only one who's been keeping secrets. So I read that synopsis and I thought this is going to be another thriller. But now that I look back on it, I'm like, well, I guess it doesn't really maybe sound like a thriller that much, but it ended up being more of a contemporary book, which it was okay, but it was just kind of like the run-of-the-mill story for me. There was nothing really special about it. You know, Georgia finds out this huge secret that her fiance has been keeping from her, and like it says in the synopsis, she flees to her family and just in hopes of just going there and just kind of getting back a sense of who she is, calming herself down, figuring out what she wants to do. While she's there, she finds that her family has kind of become overturned, and there's just been an upheaval in her entire family, and she realizes that really nothing in her life is the way that it was or what she thought that it was, and she has to kind of come to terms with that and figure out what she's going to do with both her family, with her relationship, with everything. So like I said, it just kind of was a run-of-the-mill contemporary story that nothing really stood out as being overly great. It was just kind of like meh. So that one ended up getting a 2 out of 5 star rating from me. Number 2, this one might ruffle some feathers, okay? And this is one, I'm sorry if it ruffles some of your feathers, because I know that this is going to be an unpopular opinion. I know that so many people have loved this series, but I'm talking about The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. And, you know, I ended up rating this book. Most of the books I think I gave a 4. I think the first one I gave a 4 to, and the second one I gave a 2 to, and I think the last one I gave maybe 3 stars. But overall, you know, I loved the idea of these books, and I wanted to like it so bad because I'd heard so many things about it, and that might be part of the problem too, is when you really overhype yourself up because you've read so many amazing reviews on a book and you're so positive that it's going to be so good, that when it kind of is just average, it really disappoints you. And I think that might have been what happened for me with this. But also, to be honest, I don't think Maggie Stiefvater's writing is for me. I didn't like the way she phrased certain things, especially in that first book in The Raven Boys. Just some of the way that she worded things, I was like, that doesn't even make sense. I found myself quite often in the book having to go back and reread sentences because it was just worded strangely. And I'm like, why? Even in her, like, did her editor not pick that up? I don't know. I mean, I'm no expert by any means, but even I know that this is a weird sentence, and why would she phrase this like that? So it was moments of that. And then also, I just felt like I wanted more from the books. I felt like each book could be 100 pages longer, which I don't normally say that about books, but yeah, I really felt like these books needed to be longer, needed to have more detail in them. I found a lot of the descriptions about everything to do with Glendower I found a little bit boring, and maybe that's just me not typically being into that sort of story, but I found some of it to be run on and just like a little bit too much. Like, I didn't need quite that much about Glendower. I just wanted more from the characters. I wanted to connect with them a little bit more. I really felt like some of the characters I still didn't even really know that well, even by the end of the book. Which was kind of weird to me. And yeah, like overall, I just felt like I wanted more from the story. So we're gonna overall wrap that up with a 3 rating for The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. The third book that we are going to talk about is one that I listened to on audiobook, and it is called This Is Not a Ghost Story by Andrea Portes. And this one I really was excited for because I thought it was going to be a lot different than what it ended up being. It ended up just being very, very strange. So the book follows our protagonist, and she is a young girl who has had a traumatic experience that she refuses to talk about in the book. She lets you know, like, she is telling you this story, and she lets you know right off the beginning, I've gone through something that I don't want to tell you what it is. You eventually, of course, do end up finding out what it is, but she's trying to basically run away from her past. She has grown up with her grandmother. She's quite poor, and she's on scholarship, and she got into this amazing college. It is her summer between high school and going to college, and she wants to find a job that's going to help her pay her way and get her into this really expensive fancy college so that she can live there. She ends up taking a job house sitting for a very rich couple who she doesn't meet. She only meets the husband for about 5 minutes. And basically she's just overseeing their huge mansion all summer. But while she's there, strange things start to happen. And this is where I'm thinking this story is right up my alley. Like, it's going to be a haunted house. Weird things are happening. That is just like, that's everything I need in a story. But it just ended up, our protagonist is very unreliable. And she starts, like, you can definitely sense that there's some mental health issues going on there. and she's having run-on sentences, and her thoughts are very broken. And throughout the story, it just kind of starts to get old, to be honest with you. Like, in the beginning, you're kind of intrigued by that, and you're like, what is happening? But it's just more of the same. So much so that about halfway through, I was just like, okay, I'm bored. Like, nothing's even happening in this story. Like, the story isn't being moved along like it needs to. It's just kind of stagnating, of her just not knowing what's going on, and her just having almost these same experiences in different ways over and over again. And then towards the end, I wasn't really surprised by the ending. It was definitely supposed to be a twist ending, but it was an ending that I had considered throughout the book. It was a sad ending, I will say that, but overall, I just didn't really care. It was a sad ending, and I should have felt more about that than I did, I think. But I didn't really care. I wasn't really invested enough in the character to really be upset by what happened in the end. So in the end, that book got a 2 out of 5 for me. And the last book that we are going to talk about in the worst books that I read this fall is A House at the Bottom of the Lake by Josh Malerman. Now, I have heard, this is my first Josh Malerman book that I have read. It's more of a novella, really. It's quite short. I listened to it on audiobook, and it was only, I think, 4 hours, and I listened to it on 1.85 speed, so it was pretty much 2 hours for me. So I went through it really fast. And, you know, I've heard really good things about Josh Malerman's writing, so I'm trying not to write him off, but I didn't really, a lot of the Goodreads reviews that I read after I read the book, a lot of them said that the book should not have been marketed as horror. And while I can kind of agree with that, maybe, it definitely was eerie, and there were certain parts of it where I could tell he was trying to build a horror aspect in to the book, like just by what the characters were thinking. As they basically, this 17-year-old couple, they go on their first date, they go canoeing, they end up finding a secret lake, and they end up finding a house at the bottom of the lake. They're on this lake that's just, there's nobody on it. It looks like it's completely remote. Nobody goes there, and they look down and they literally see a roof underneath them, and they're like, there's a house down there. So they go down exploring, and they keep continuing to be drawn back to this house. And kind of their relationship ends up revolving around this house, and it becomes almost an addiction for them to continue going and exploring this. It's like a huge mansion underneath the house, or underneath the lake, and they're wondering what what? Because that doesn't just happen. A huge, like, beautiful mansion doesn't just happen underneath the bottom of a lake, right? So it's definitely a really cool premise for the story, but it just, the way it was executed, I think wasn't, it definitely needed to be more. Like I said, it was a novella. Perhaps if he had expanded on it a bit and made it into an actual novel, maybe I would feel differently about it. And also the ending was very, very strange. The ending made no sense. It left you guessing, which I don't particularly like when authors do that. I personally find that to be kind of like a cop-out, where you don't really answer any questions to your audience. You just are left, they're just left wondering. And I feel like it's almost like he just was at a deadline, and he was like, well, I don't know what to put, so I'm just gonna end it here, and you all can figure out for yourself what happened. And I don't particularly like it when authors do that. But like I said, I have heard so many good things about Josh Malerman, so I'm going to try to give him another chance. I definitely wanted to read, I think he wrote Bird Box, which I never watched the Netflix special because I wanted to read the book first, and I never did. But I know that that has gotten so many good reviews, so I'm sure that maybe this was just kind of a one-off from him, because even in a lot of the Goodreads reviews, people said that they liked his other work, so they were really excited to read this one, and it didn't live up to their expectations either. So, is what it is, I guess. But yeah, like I said, throughout the kind of inner dialogue, when you're kind of reading their thoughts, like you can tell as they're exploring this place, like their thoughts are running away with them. And that's kind of the scary part, is they're thinking like what's going to be around the corner sort of thing. So that part is kind of what makes it thrillery, I guess. But it definitely, I don't think, was very scary. So I can kind of see how it would have maybe been misrepresented as being horror. But Anyways, you guys, those were some of the worst books, unfortunately, that I read this fall. And if you guys want to come back and see what were the best books that I read this fall, that's going to be the next video that I have coming out in a few days. So make sure you hit subscribe and click the bell so that you're notified when I upload that video, and I hope to see you in my next video. Hope you're all having a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!